The next panel we have is leadership and the importance of youth. And I also feel like there's a little intro here. We all have the opportunity to demonstrate everyday leadership. Rising young leaders, in particular, possess an amazing ability to influence and inspire us all. And one of the sayings that we use quite often in Australia for our Indigenous leaders is we pay tribute to our leaders both past, present, and emerging. So I'm really excited to welcome you guys as emerging leaders. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to what you guys have to say. And Andy, thank you so much for hosting them.
Excellent.
Actually, can we start with a little rain? Let's bring some rain to these guys. 1 finger, 2 fingers, 3 fingers, 4 fingers. All right, 5 finger clap.
Thank you, River. So first I want to ground this session in gratitude. I'm grateful for this amazingly beautiful day. I'm grateful for my panelists who are joining me here, who are such an inspiration. I'm grateful for all of you for being here today. I'm grateful for Vanessa and the team for organizing this amazing event. It's been energizing, it's been inspiring, and it is hopeful. And it was great to hear Joao speak before, and the last question I thought was a fantastic one, which was the opposite, this notion of fear, right? And what's the opposite side of fear? And hope, I thought, was a fantastic answer. So I think you're going to come away from this particular panel a little more hopeful, because in the short time I've spent with this amazing cohort, I certainly have been inspired, and I feel a lot more hopeful. You're all young leaders in your own right, and I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves. And what I guess the first question I'd like to ask is that fear, especially early in your life as you're emerging as a leader, it really takes courage. So the question is going to be, what did it take you to kind of build up the courage to step out and become a leader in whatever your passion is? So if we could, maybe, Annika, I'll start with you. Introduce yourself, please, and then talk a little about the courage it took to first step into that leadership role.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Annika Robinson. I'm from Colombia. I'm very happy to be here. I would say what definitely helped me gain that courage was love. My love for the environment, my love for nature, my love for the ocean specifically. I think that love really helped me build up that courage, and I figured if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it with love, with passion, with devotion, with everything.
Amazing. Fantastic. Yes. Yeah. For sure.
Thank you, guys.
Clara, how about you?
Hi, everyone. You've probably seen me running around. Clara, I'm originally from Brazil, but based here in Portugal for the past 2 years. Okay, short intro. I've worked with different campaigns related to environmental governance in an international level. Currently more engaged with the governance of climate-altering technologies called solar radiation modification. So lots of people don't know, even in the environmental and climate bubble, that we have technologies that can reduce the Earth's temperature. And I'm trying to push the UN and member states to address those technologies because it's really hard to govern them. And I'm also working on a campaign with the International Court of Justice that is seeking an advisory opinion on the climate crisis as a human rights issue. And it's a campaign led by young people from all around the world. It started in the Pacific, but it multiplied and it's all over. And answering to your question, I think my courage comes from the fear of losing the beauty of, because like the planet will be fine. Humans might not be here thriving, but the planet will keep on existing. And what makes me sad about this is that humans in the next generations might not be able to see the same beauty that I have seen in the world and that I know that my parents have seen. I grew up being very fortunate to have a family that would go to the most remote places in Brazil. My stepdad is a bird photographer, so I've been to some places that are amazing and super stunning, and I'm really scared that young people, old people, it doesn't matter, but humans in the future won't be able to see that. So it does come from fear of losing things.
Amazing. So we've hit the spectrum already from fear to love in building the courage. I also want to give a shout out to these two because they are also behind the scenes helping make this entire event happen. So thank you so much for your hard work in doing so. All right, Marina, talk to us a little bit about your early journey and the courage it took to step into the light.
Okay, so introduction. I'm Marina. I'm also from Brazil, based in Lisbon to study. And in the other panel, when I was talking about rage and anger, I mentioned a bit about the education in my life. So I come from a city in Brazil that like hosts the second biggest steel maker in the whole country. So it's called Volta Redonda, and it's like the Companhia Nacional Siderúrgica, and that's like since early age I've suffered with like breathing like allergies, and like the pollution was awful in my city, and like the city it's not really engaged, and more than half of it elected Bolsonaro that was openly against the environment. So even living in a polluted city, even living in like an environment that would like push people to act on climate and act like for the environment, that didn't happen. But I'm here today and I'm engaged in a few campaigns, and that's because since early age, my dad, who's a biology professor, he taught me that like we were living in a crisis and there is a solution for this, because the world was not like this. Like this was something that was built. This is something that like it's happening because of like some people that wants just profit and profit and profit. And I would say that like since early age, this kind of like this is not how I want to live like the rest of my life. This is not the world that I envision for me, for my people, for my friends, for I don't have kids, but like for my uncles. And I would say that courage comes a lot from like fear, but also this like hope that that is not what I want, and there is something like more beautiful, and there is something like more healthy and prosperous that we can live. There is another world that is possible, and there are people here that believe in that as well. So like my courage and my activism and all that stuff, it's based on a hope of this other world that is possible, and that we have people to build it with us.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you. Cal, as our youngest panelist here, you're in an environment where peer pressure can be heavy, and so talk to us about the courage it takes for you to stand apart from the crowd a bit.
Yeah. Oh, whoa. Hi. Hi. My name is Cal. And yeah, I'm only 16 years old, and I'm certainly not as accomplished as the rest of these
Come on.
of these panelists. But I do think that's an interesting question. Peer pressure is really important, especially when you're young. But I think that once you reach a certain point, where you think that more important than being popular, or more important than being seen as normal, is like the actual is contributing to actually what's happening. And when you, like these people have, when you say that it is more important to start to help the environment, it's more important to speak out than to just be a regular citizen, then I don't think peer pressure is really a factor anymore.
Fantastic. Well, it takes courage, and certainly the four of you have all demonstrated it. I'm actually a big fan of positive peer pressure when we celebrate those things that we think are contributing to a better world. And I've heard a number of times people say, well, we're talking to a very easy audience here. But I think, I mean, I've picked up a few things. I'm inspired by what people have said already today. And so even those simple three questions that were asked around, you know, what we do, what we buy, who we vote for, those things I think are really good triggers for us to remind ourselves that our everyday actions have an impact, and then our ability to talk about it openly with other people has an impact as well. Each of you has kind of a unique aspect of contributing to our planet, our environment, our society that you're particularly passionate about. You spread broader and deeper. But maybe talk a little bit, if you could, about your particular passion. And Cal, I know yours is around food and food systems, and that's one where I think it's a personal choice, which makes it both really challenging and in some ways an easy thing to do. Certainly inspired by the earlier show of the amazing elephants, who are these strong, majestic, plant-based animals. But talk to us about your relationship to food, food systems, and then the impact on the planet.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the fact that it is a personal choice makes it a lot more interesting. Because when we talk about the environment, a lot of what we talk about is like lobbying for change, and that change can really only come from like head of states and like large multinational companies. And so until they choose to stop drilling for oil, to stop buying oil, there's not much we can do. But when it comes to diet, there is, right? That's a personal choice. Tomorrow you can say, hey, that I don't want to contribute to climate change anymore. I want to have a future where like my children or the people I love can experience the world as we see it today. And I think it's kind of something we don't talk about enough, because when you look at it, right, like if we talk about the Amazon rainforest, for example, right, it's like the biggest rainforest in the world. Two of our panelists are from Brazil, and it's so important. It's so biodiverse, right? If I asked you guys right now, or we need to stop illegal logging, but I saw a fact the other day, and it's like 70% of the rainforest is cut down for animal agriculture, to grow crops for cows, pigs, chicken, and to create space for them. And so there's a easy fix right there. If the demand is no longer there, and that's a choice that we all have to make, if the demand is no longer there, the one of the most beautiful, important, biologically, places in the world can be saved.
Yeah, we were talking about it actually when we got together earlier, and gratitude for the vegan sandwiches, which were delicious and served here. How many events we've been to that are climate focused, and yet they're still not serving plant-based meals. There seems to be a real disconnect there. Cal, one more question before I move on. Give people the relative scale. Like, what's the impact of animal agriculture relative to other things that we're concerned about that have an impact on the environment?
Right. So yeah, I can definitely say some stuff about that. So about 20% of greenhouse gas emissions come from animal agriculture by itself, just simply from the production of meat, right? And the transportation industry is about 28%. Which means that something we talk about way more, and something that's a lot more difficult, especially for an average person who needs their transportation, who it's probably a lot more difficult to switch to an electric vehicle, and who can't walk everywhere. A 28% difference for 28% of the emissions for transportation versus 20% simply for the act of eating meat. Is really shocking, because we talk about transportation so much, and I feel like we almost never talk about how big of an impact eating meat has.
Thank you. It's interesting how related all these things are as well. You think about how we started the day with Joanna from the city of Cascais talking about how they're regrowing kelp just offshore here, to seeing kelp burgers and kelp nuggets earlier in the day. I'm excited to try those. I'm not sure about the branding around how you talk about kelp burgers, but certainly excited to try it. We have talked a lot about how so many of these things today are interrelated. Marina, talk about your passion and passions and what's most close to your heart when you think about the impact you would like to have.
Yeah, I already think I gave like a spoiler about it. I work a lot with education and climate education because that was like how I was introduced into this. And when we started this project in Brazil, like Schools for Future, Schools for Climate, we were thinking that like this little girl from Sweden decided to like start skipping classes on Friday, and yeah, go Greta, that's great. But when we go back to Brazil, especially in like talking about more like grand scale, talking about the whole country, and specifically now about like public schools and people that are like in the peripheries, and the schools there, people go to school and some of them don't have what to eat at house, so they eat at the schools. And when like this strike for climate started hitting in Brazil, some friend of mine said, but we cannot like ask people to like start skipping classes if like they go to classes to eat. That's like one of the only meals that they have on the day. So we kind of adapt the movement in Brazil. Of course, there are some people that can skip classes, but we also have like other projects and other things that we do. And so we started this project, like Schools for Future, and on the global day of strikes, like global strike days or whatever, we literally just like knock on the doors or send an email saying, "Hi, I'm a climate activist. Like, can we talk with your students about like what is happening from like young people to young people?" And this was so amazing. Like in one day, it was still during the pandemic, so we did that online. In one day, we could talk with like more than 70 schools around the country, with like more than 3,000 students, and this was amazing. Like it was so great, and it was so good that we were young people and we were talking with young people and we were sharing with them like this is our future, this is our present, and like the effects that are happening in your community, that's not natural, that's on purpose. There is like a reason for this and there are solutions for this, so let's try to work on that together. So yeah, but that's great. We did that one day and some of them started like getting engaged in the movement, but we thought we are only a few young people in a huge country and in a huge world. We cannot like start educating a lot of people by ourselves. So we did a manifesto for climate education in Brazil, and we took that to COP26, and we started like talking with few politicians from Brazil, but also few politicians from around the globe, and we got some signatures and the like media attention. And when we got back to Brazil, we could approve like a law project, and now it's only an authorization project, but like we can lobby that to be mandatory in schools. And the city of Rio de Janeiro and also the state of Rio de Janeiro now have this bill that schools have to give climate education for the student, but not only climate education, like talking about biology or geography or scientific ways, but an intersectional way that is like transversal to all the subjects, because that's the way we think climate education should be given to students, so they understand the problem in a like holistic way and not only in a scientific way. And nowadays I study like political science and international relations, and like I am totally passionate about the climate cause because I think all the sectors need to be engaged, and like education, that's like the thing that always like touch my heart, because I think that's the way we can engage more and more people. But I just wanted to add on another stuff that Carl was talking about, like this individual choice and personal choice. And of course, when people are like sensible to the cause, and when they think, yes, I can do something, I can change like individually, that's amazing. And if you have the opportunity, do change like what you eat, what you buy, and for the people that you vote. But especially coming from a global south country, coming from Brazil, there is a climate scientist that I like a lot, and he says that like in Brazil, more people don't have the option to choose like between two stuff to eat. They don't have the option to choose how they go to work. They don't have the option to choose what they are buying to dress. So like when we talk about the climate crisis, we need to talk about the social crisis. We need to talk about like the economic crisis. We need to talk about racism. We need to talk about the peripheries and how they are engaged in this crisis. So like coming all the way back to how we started the educational project, we started because we understood that we could not take people out of schools. And when we are talking about individual change, we need also to understand the context of that community, so we can say yes, do change like your habits if you have the possibility to do so. Because yeah, I just wanted to highlight that it's like depending on the context, especially like talking about Brazil, indigenous communities in Brazil, a lot of them, it's part of their culture to still eat meat. But that's, they do in a way that is sustainable, they do in a way that like respect their contents and respect their ancestors. And I just wanted to also highlight that, like, I myself, I don't eat meat, and that's like a personal choice, and I think you should all start transiting to that. But we need to also to understand the context, because some people just cannot choose between two stuff to eat, cannot choose between going to work by like bike or going to work by public transport, and cannot choose what they are buying to
And I think
wear.
that's when you need to start like lobbying and protesting, because if you don't have that choice, then it's clearly a fault of the government or something
Amazing.
like that.
Thank you, Marina. Just to take 1 minute, Joao talked about preparation, and oftentimes the lack of preparation allows us to be a little more relaxed and eloquent. This group is so amazingly intelligent, aware, and eloquent. And we did like maybe a 5-minute presentation while there was a lot of noise around and people doing things. So just an acknowledgement of how amazing this young group is. They're really fantastic. Yeah, woohoo, for sure. Clara, you are engaged in many different aspects of having an impact in protecting our climate and our planet. Talk to us a little bit about your passion and where you would like to most have an impact.
Okay, I think, well, life is a journey, right? And through the years, like I don't
Clara.
feel, I don't feel myself as young anymore, because when you're in the youth movement and you start when you're 14, 15, now when you're almost 25, then it's been a decade. So like I'm super happy to just hear Marina and Kal and Annika talking, because it's like I've been in their shoes as well, and I want to listen to them. But I would say for me, my passion started with veganism as well, so that's why I was super happy that Kal wanted to bring that up. That's when I first understood myself as an activist, because I really saw how intersectional talking about veganism was, and how it could link all of my passions from arts to policy making into it. But then I would say that nowadays, it's hard for me being involved in so many different projects to say that I have only one passion. I would say that all the things that I do, they're things that I truly believe in, and that I think they have a power of changing the system. I would say that I have a passion for systems change, and when people really understand that systems change is something we need, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. If you're a chef, if you're a ballerina, if you're a doctor, if you work with construction, because you have a role to play in all different areas of society. So, yeah, keeping it short, systems change, that's my passion.
Amazing. Thank you for saying that. That's one that I think doesn't get talked about as much, because when you start to put change systems, then you have the ability to innovate and iterate and do it at speed and scale that you can't otherwise. And so that systems change, I think, is a fantastic concept. Annika, talk to the people about your passion.
Absolutely. Well, similarly to Clara, I have so many different passions. When I was growing up in Colombia, I'm now currently based in Madrid. I've been there for 4 years. But while I was growing up in Colombia, I had the immense privilege of being able to meet so many amazing people and work with so many different organizations, specifically with one called GIN, or Global Issues Network, where together, me and a couple of other classmates, we decided that we were in the position to make a change, to create an impact, and so we went for it, and we created so many different sustainable and development projects down in Colombia. I think we reached, like, I've been working with them since the age of 12, so I've been active for 10 years now, if you will. But I've enjoyed every single second of it. And I guess for me, it all started when I understood that I was in a position where I could do something. And you guys were talking about earlier how if you have the opportunity to do something about it and make a choice and go for it and make that choice. And I was always very inspired by people who showed true kindness, true humbleness, and people who were completely fine and completely okay with lending out a hand with never expecting anything in return. And that's something that had inspired me from a very young age, and I knew that I was in a position where I could give back to the community, because I feel so blessed that I've been able to live such a great and fantastic life. Even the fact that I get to be able to be in this event here in Cascais, Portugal with all of you, I just feel so much gratitude for it. And I feel like this is sort of, in a way, my way of giving back, but I've also always been very passionate about the earth, nature, and the ocean. And so I became a diver from a very young age, and I fell in love with the ocean instantly with my first dive. It felt like magic. Like, the ocean will always be my first love. And as I was saying earlier, like, I want to do things out of love and with kindness, and I want to create a community, and I want to create a world where everyone sees, as we were mentioning earlier, the beauty that this planet and this earth has to offer. Because despite sometimes having bad days and bad things happening, I believe that there's always a silver lining. And if you sit me down to watch a sunset by the beach, or just sit down in a park, I'm just mesmerized. I'm like, this is my happy place, and I want to protect it, I want to value it, and I want to lend out my hand to the community and do whatever I can, wherever that is, with whomever that is. And so that's where I'm at.
Amazing. Yeah, for sure. So I would like to leave a little space for a few questions. Before I go there, to me, I think it was helpful to hear, and a little bit surprising when we gathered as a group, kind of where you all are on the hopefulness to hopelessness spectrum. And I think it's important for us as elders, or those who have gone slightly before but are still, many of us still learning from you, to make sure that we're giving you the encouragement, the empowerment, the opportunity to lead, and to lead by example, but also the reflection of, like, the hope that you give us, because you all genuinely, just in the time I've spent with you, give me so much hope and so much inspiration. And I know that doesn't always, like, you don't always feel that yourself. Like, it can feel like a really challenging battle. So just, if you get a chance to connect with some of our brilliant young panelists afterwards, make sure you are reflecting that with them. And I know this is, as I said, it's a relatively easy audience, but boy, it is true. We need you. You're amazing. So please keep up the good work. I'd like to move, if we could, to a few questions from the audience, and then maybe we'll close with one final question. So, Amit, yes, sir.
Where's our mic?
You can speak. Yeah.
There was one mic here. Yeah.
The extreme Hangout coordinator just went like that.
Just utterly amazing. So, question to you. What would you like
You have to turn it on.
besides turning it on? It is. Yeah. What can we do? What would you like us to do for your missions?
I think you have to be as bold as you can. We can't really accommodate, and I mean, green transition for me is fake news, because yeah, we say we need more electric cars, but if we're going to get the minerals from the deep sea, that's not really a transition that is green to me. So I think even using the sustainability discourse, we have to be very careful if it's really sustainable or not. Maybe we don't need a huge amount of new batteries. Maybe we just need to reduce the amount of energy that we consume. Just an example. So I think that's what I mean by being bold, is really going down to the core of the necessity that we're trying to address and thinking maybe that we don't really need that. So yeah, and that goes for all of the areas. Like I said, we live in a system, right? And so in each point of this network, there's something we can change. deep down.
Yeah, and if I could say something, sorry, that was loud. I think it's important, like with further generations, just to kind of look ahead, because one of the most like what I'm sorry to go here, but a depressing statistic that I saw the other day was something like if if we continue on the path that we're on, right, by 2050, 2050, there will be no fish in the sea, and like at all, just no fish, no turtles, no whales, no dolphins. It doesn't matter, no fish. Um, and as somebody who has the privilege of traveling a lot, when I think about that point, right, and in 2050, hopefully I'll have some kids of my own. If they don't have that ability to, go snorkeling, to see the fish, to experience that, um, right, that makes me kind of sad and moved to try to make a difference. But I think that people who might not be as affected by that in 2050, if you guys could just, stay aware of what that will be like, right? Um, yeah, that's important.
Yeah, I want to quickly add on that personally, I think that the best thing that you can do is listen. Listen to what, for instance, the people here, they have so many amazing stories, so many amazing things that they want to share, brilliant ideas. I feel like our generation and even older generations, they've come up with great innovative solutions. It can be even such like a small thing. You may not necessarily always have to agree with it, but just listening to what they have to say, listening to the new ideas that are coming to the future, because we're going to be the generations that's going to be taking care of the next planet. We're going to be teaching the future generations about the world and human life and earth. And so I think if we all just listen to what we have to say, we can learn so much.
Really quick, and more general spectrum. Like, we are the next generation. We are the generation that will assume this word. Like, a few of us are already like leading, I don't know, business and CEOs, and like we have like young politicians that are already there. But most of us are not like ruling the world yet. We will do, but not yet. And in this like positions of like decision making or positions of power are still like the last generation. And I would say that like if you are a person that like are in a position of power, are in a position like ruling a business or that stuff, just listen, but not only passing the mic to listen, but also actively engaging young people in the implementations of the solutions that you want to implement, because I believe that like the non-young people here are really selected audience. You all want to work for a better world, but like try to consultate us on what better word you're trying to implement, because we might have some inputs on the word that you're leading to us.
I look forward to your inputs for sure. Absolutely. Yes, please.
So thank you first and foremost. I'm really inspired. I feel super humbled because like I woke up for Impact, I would say like 8 years ago, and you've woken up more than 10, and so I'm really thankful for your testimonies. I wanted to ask you, how do you perceive politics? Because nowadays youth is completely disconnected from politics, and in order to make these big decisions, we have to use politics in favor of climate change. And so, as youth yourselves, how do you see this disengagement of youth, and how can we bring youth back into politics and maybe?
Okay, I'll go first. How do I see politics, and if the youth is so disengaged? I would say, based on like what I've collected over the years from my peers and just listening to other people, I would say that at least the part of my generation that I know, sometimes they felt very discouraged, unheard. They lack a lot of hope because they believe that sometimes they feel that their vote doesn't count, as if it doesn't matter when it definitely does. And they see these politicians talk about doing this and doing that, and sometimes they may be against it and they want to protest that they're against it, but sometimes they don't feel like they're heard. And when you don't feel like you're heard, a lot of people, I've heard the mentality of, what's the point? Why should I engage if like my vote isn't gonna make a difference? But that's a big mentality that personally I want to change, because I do believe that every vote matters and every vote counts. And I personally studied international relations, and I was going to study political science, and I've always been very interested in politics. I think that politics is a huge conversation that every age group needs to be involved in, needs to have at least some level of understanding of what's going on. Politics can sometimes be very tricky here and there. There's a lot of loopholes and hidden agendas here and there, and I think that the more clear that we can be with our voices in the politics that are being shown, and the more that we, whether it be in schools or at home, that people sort of talk about more of like the facts about, oh, this political side is advocating or campaigning for this, this, and this, saying the facts, and then sort of like introducing the factual politics to our generation, then they can make their own decision on where they stand based on their own critical thinking of the knowledge that they've gotten. And hopefully that's something that we can improve and change, and the youth will be way more invested into politics and will understand that their vote really does matter.
I think it was on purpose that we disconnected politics from citizens so that it would be harder for citizens to access the political spaces. And so I think for now the challenge is, how can we make young people really feel themselves as citizens, as people who have the right to complain and to see this complaint change. So I really liked this morning when Joanna Balsemont said like, oh, I also want to hear your complaints, because we don't get that really often. Sometimes some politicians do say that, but then like Marina said, it doesn't mean they will implement the things. But I think we should really concentrate our efforts now in also building a generation that wants to become politicians. I think we need to rebrand how politics looks like. I kind of consider myself as a politician because I have to be in spaces with those politicians and to advocate for the things that I care for. And I understood, what that's something I can do, and that's something that more young people should be considering. I think it's really sad when people say like, oh, that's not really for me, but then they're doing an amazing work, I don't know, regenerating kelp forests, for example. But then, even though they're doing an amazing work, they don't think they should be inside those spaces as well. They shouldn't go to their local city hall or something like that. So I think it's just like, first of all, really understanding ourselves as citizens and the duty and the rights that come with that, making those spaces more accessible. So really opening doors. I think people should understand that they can just walk up to where they want and request a meeting or file a complaint, because protests might not get to the politicians, but if you do schedule a meeting and you're pressuring that what you want is put on the agenda, that meeting will have to happen at one point. And then, yeah, finally, like I said, we need to have a new generation of politicians that really want to change things and not just keep the status quo.
Clara, you have my vote. All right, maybe one last question. One last question for our amazing panelists. Anyone?
Yeah, it's actually funny because I wanted to ask more or less the same question. Because I work in nonprofit, and at one point I was, okay, I have to get into politics because even a nonprofit, I have to play to the rules of the organizations. And if you think about how do we create change and we have social innovation, well, most disruptive technologies implemented in companies will lead to fail, right? To fail these companies. So that's a big problem. So I wanted to ask you, how can policymakers help to convince politicians and big companies to implement disruptive technologies without fearing the risk to fail?
Well, if I may take just one quick stab at this, and then if others want to opine. Fear is often what keeps us from change, right? So that certainly is something to acknowledge, that it's fear that keeps us from doing it. And then hopefully it is a groundswell of market demand from our amazing panelists and the people around them and their cohort of the rising purchasing power that comes, that votes with their dollars and their interests and their needs. So I don't know, anybody else want to take a swing at that one?
Sure. I think more than anything, I think politics are important because that's kind of how things get done, right? And so I know it seems discouraging for a lot of people. And sometimes when I look at like the percentages of people who vote in countries, it's discouraging to me, right? Because like, if you say only 50% of people voted, does that mean only 50% of people really care about what's going to happen in the future? As they said, not really. I think people are just don't believe in the system. And like they said, I think that's something we need to change because it's the way we're going to get things done.
Yeah, I'd also encourage to break down this notion of the us and them piece, right? The they at this point, when you look at what we're dealing with global climate change, it is us, right? So we are the people who will have an impact. So each of us has that ability, and at times it can feel so challenging when it's a distant them versus us being the ones who have the impact. I wanted to just close with so much gratitude for each of the four of you. You are truly an inspiration. You go out and touch, two more people in that metaphor that River started the day with our ancestral wings, and you think about the multiplying effect if you just touch two more people and they touch two more people. So you have certainly done that more than just two today, and I'm grateful for your time, your commitment, your inspiration, your energy. Thank you so much, everybody. If you big hand for our panelists today.
Give it up! Yes. Wow.
Yeah, just it.
Yeah, great. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Cal, Clara, Annika, Marina, and Andy for hosting.